Okay, welcome back to the Hawkins Community Pool.
Let's go take a deep, deep dive into the cool chlorine-filled... Fuck. Let's take a deep, deep dive into the chlorine-filled, icy, crystal clear waters of the Hawkins Community Pool.
Oh my goodness, we're not getting any better at this
We're
intro.
not. It keeps getting worse, actually. Yeah.
All right, so this is our bonus episodes for Skull Rock Broadcast, and we are super excited to have a friend joining us for this conversation today. So welcome, Candace.
Thank you, guys. I am so happy and grateful to be here.
Happy to have you.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself, just for the listeners.
I've been a fan of the show for a little over 2 years now. I've gotten really in love with it. My family would probably say low-key obsessed with it. I am a writer. I have a lot of theater background. I'm also a really big mental health advocate, and yeah, I'm just a nerd, happy to be here.
Love that.
And you're in good company.
Mm-hmm.
We love having you here. So we did want to talk a little bit about mental health today. And I know that's a sensitive topic for some people. So just know that we might be going into some topics that might be a little bit difficult to talk about, to hear about sometimes. So keep that in mind. Take care of yourself as you're listening. But we wanted to talk about, or Candace had the great idea to talk about, some of the mental health representation in especially Stranger Things season 4 with Max. So tell us a little bit of what you were thinking with that.
Max's storyline in season 4 really resonates with me, especially because I dealt with loss at a really young age, just like Max has. I know my relationship with my mom was drastically different from Max's relationship with Billy. I was just blown away and really moved by how thoughtful the cast and the writers were in portraying her struggles with mental health, how isolating that can really be, and how music really is a genuine lifeline for us. It can help us to stay grounded when we feel like we don't have any ground to stand on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I definitely think that Max, it was hard to watch at the beginning of season 4 because in season 2, she wants so badly to be a part of that group. And we were rewatching season 2 and talking about that right now. So we just watched the episode where Lucas fills her in on everything. So, and he asks her before he starts to tell her, he says, if you know this, you could be hurt, you could be killed. Do you accept the risk? And I got chills when I watched that part, because knowing now what she's gone through as a part of this, but it's not because she knows that this stuff is happening. It would have happened to her no matter what, but it was just
the evil wizard's fault.
Yeah, exactly. It's not
the clock making wizard.
Yeah. But then season 3, she's such a bubbly person and is so engaging and fun with Elle. And to watch her, that drastic transition for season 4, where she's not really hanging out with anybody, she's kind of isolated. So I do think it's realistic that they portrayed her this way, because I think sometimes one fault of the show is that these kids have gone through some awful shit. The kids, the teenagers, and you don't really get to see them dealing with that trauma in any way. So it was refreshing in a way to see Max go through this, but it was also very upsetting and difficult. And then also, even though she was isolating herself, I did like that, like, she still sat with Mike and Dustin at the pep rally. They were still there for her, even though she wasn't as engaged with them as she might have been previously. It was nice to see. We've talked about how, like, the Mike Max friendship is something that I feel like could have been explored a little bit more, because when Will and Elle left, it seems like the 3 of them, with Dustin as well, kind of still hung out and everything, and that was just kind of an interesting connection as well. So, yeah, I definitely think there's a lot to unpack with Max in season 4 and starting from that very first episode. But the music part as well is really cool, because even throughout all of that, she's got those headphones on in the very first episode. So,
Yeah, like I said, like I really relate to what Max is going through in season 4. Because, I lost my mom like 6th grade. Um, and I remember 6th grade, I had like the normal like anxieties that come with entering like a new school, trying to fit in and stuff, trying to make friends. And I remember like before my mom passed, like I was really kind of more extroverted and bubbly and stuff. And I remember, even like in the recent weeks after her passing and stuff, I was still very much like Max at the end of season 3. She just lost Billy, and yet the last time we see her in season 3 really is, she's with Lucas making
singing.
fun of Dustin.
Trying to
Yeah,
pretend
they're
everything's
singing.
still okay.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and she was trying to still be happy and normal. And that hits home because that's what I was trying to do for my family and for myself. And I just remember, like it didn't last very long. Like I switched to how we see Max in season 4. In the beginning of season 4, where she just feels so kind of alienated by her experience. And it's like, you have people around you. You want to participate in what's going on around you. You want to be active in your friendships and stuff. But there's just something that comes with trauma and mental health struggles that makes that seem like really impossible. And I found solace in music. Like I was attached to my CD player. I was attached to my albums. Um, they got me through so much.
And it feels almost like the empty noise, like, at least in my experiences, that happens. Like, I've noticed, like, music really helps listening to podcasts, just hearing that background noise to fill the dead noise, because then your mind starts spinning and, your thoughts don't exactly are, cheery, and lighthearted. So I think music, I remember my father said this after my mother passed away. He said, "Do you find yourself listening to music more?" And I'm more of a movie person. But I was like, yeah, actually, I'm not really a music person. I'm terrible at naming artists and bands. But I was like, yeah, I'm noticing, like, sometimes I'd drive in silence. After she passed away, I always have the radio on. And, I think, there's certain songs that will remind you of ones that you have lost, or they'll bring you back to a different time in your life when there were good memories and stuff. And they say that music, and I think also the sense of smell, bring back the strongest sense of memories, because like you could smell like these cookies that say, like, your grandmother baked you back when you were little and you haven't smelled that particular cookie in so long. It would be just like you listening to a song that maybe you remember listening or seeing in concert live for the first time when you were younger, more carefree, and it will make that emotional connection. So I like that we saw her as soon as she gets off that effing bus, she's got her headphones on. And I liked that, like Megan said, she was there being supportive with Mike and Dustin during the rally. And even though Lucas tried to confront her in his own way, trying to help, being like, I can tell something's wrong. You're like a ghost, you're kind of pulling away. I like that she was still listening to the game, because she did care enough. But you can see that, like, her home life has abruptly and very drastically changed. Her mom's barely holding it together, working 2 jobs, drinking. She's alone a lot, and part of that is her circumstances. And then another part is her depression. So I think the music in the headphones was just a really nice detail, because for us, we would listen to our CD players and then our, scan disc iPod, shuffle. But for them back then, it was their Walkman, it was their mixtapes, So I think that music has always been very important throughout this show, but season 4 is what like hit the home run, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, and the characters interacting with the music more than just the music being on in the background. So,
And I agree, like going back to when she's in Miss Kelly's office,
Mm-hmm.
she still has her headphones on. And Miss Kelly, she's trying to be like the good mental health professional, trying to be like an actual of actual help to Max. And she's like, can you just take the headphones off?
Take a moment.
And
Yeah.
it's like Max is so used to having these headphones on that like sometimes I feel like maybe she doesn't realize she still has them on.
It's like her
Like
security blanket. It's like people with sunglasses.
exactly. And
It's
that
like
is
that.
so relatable
Yep.
because like I would always like even in class I remember like counting down the minutes in class until I could listen to my music again
Mm-hmm.
because
It's a comfort.
music just made me feel like I could still be here.
Yeah.
Because I think when you're going through something similar to what Max is going through, it's hard for you to get out of bed.
Yeah.
It's hard for you to be anywhere, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And music is one of those things that just it helps you carry some of that weight, even if you're not really cognizant of it at the time. And with Lucas, like I love how he's trying to reach out to her in that hallway scene afterwards. But I also like, oof, I totally get Max's reaction. And I don't think she's necessarily like offended, even though it seems that way. But to me, it's
Mhm.
more like I I was Max in middle school, and in college. Like when people say that kind of stuff to you, like you're like a ghost. You're like it's like you're not even really here. Like I know something is wrong. You might want to really like communicate what's wrong, but if you don't have the words for it, or if you're feeling like the stigma that's so attached to mental health issues, um, or if you're worried about being a burden, I think Max, when she heard Lucas tell her, like, it's like, you're not even here, it's like, oh, I'm already being a burden in a sense
Right,
because
but
I'm not being there.
that's not what he was
No,
trying to
no.
portray at all. So it's also sort of
Exactly, but I
knowing,
can
yeah,
understand how that message gets
Yeah.
mixed.
And that's how a 14-year-old boy who, yes, he's been through very traumatic events, but
yeah,
nothing nearly as horrible and horrific as Max, but that's how he thought as the ex-boyfriend, caring friend, like, I'll give her tickets to my basketball game to get her out. And
Exactly.
that was almost like, no, that's not the way to go. But I do love, especially, there's this great line that she says later on in the RV, and he's panicking. He's like, we should find somebody else. And she's the voice of logic. And she goes, I'll run into the light, you know? And I think that's how you gotta like just deal with the heaviness, Like we were talking
Oh,
to
yeah.
Juan and he was like, life's hard, life's horrific, And I always joke with Megan, I'm like, I live in my little Stacy coconut fantasy because I feel like, what I think it was after my dog, Winchester, block your ears, Quinn, passed away. And I remember to my friend Kathy, I just started like stating out loud every bad thing that had happened to me. And usually I'm bubbly and happy go lucky. And she went, stop that thinking right now. Because she goes,
Mhm.
how do you feel right now that you've stated it all in a row, put it all in front of you? How do you feel? And I said, pretty effing awful. And she went, start thinking about what good has happened to you, And I always tell my friend Jeanette and Melissa, I'm always like, my mom hadn't passed away. I wouldn't have got away to school the time I did, and I wouldn't have never met you guys, Like everything I feel happens for a reason. And with Max, I think she found that inner strength because she already was a child from divorce. She was uprooted. She probably witnessed a lot of the abuse that, Neil was inflicting on Billy. We don't know the whole story. We know that things got really ugly afterwards when he left them, that there were financial troubles, the mother's drinking, So I think her just telling him, I'm going to run to the light. That's why I think Dear Billy is such an important episode, that A, that musical connection, and B, I always point this out when she has the like montage, it's all of her friends. And I love that, even though my favorite like relationship is her and Lucas, I do love that their kiss at the snowball dance wasn't the thing that made her snap out of it. It was her high five to Elle. And friendships can really, really help. I tell anybody who's experiencing a hard time, I'm like, surround yourself with your people. Even if it's a small circle, talk with your friends. So her remembering that moment, maybe her first strong connection with a girl her own age that she was able to mentor and shadow in season 3. And I love that kind of gave her the strength. And they're almost like this little family at the end. My favorite shot in the whole show is when she says, I'm still here, and they're still holding her, that speaks volumes, and that's so powerful because they are like their own little family. Her friends and music saved her life,
Yeah, yeah, but I think that's a good point because it wasn't just the music, it was the fact that those people brought her that music and worked so hard to, like, bring her back out, and then she decided to go towards the light. Like,
Yep.
she could have
She could have
just,
just shut her eyes and been like, all
shut
right.
her eyes and said, like, "Yep, all this shit has happened to me," but, like, she decided to get away from him and make that decision for herself, so it was kind of showing that kind of making that decision for yourself, focusing on the good, and then throughout the remainder of the season, she was still struggling, but you could tell she was trying so hard to fight her way out of it. The other thing that I was kind of thinking about as we were talking about the very beginning was even though it was first of all, Sadie Sink's performance throughout the entire season is
Perfection.
Absolutely,
incredible.
like,
So I feel like that needs
beautiful.
to be, yeah, said. But when she was struggling, but when she heard Chrissy, her first instinct was still to help
Help.
and to see
Yep.
what she could do. And she made that connection later that Chrissy was also struggling, and maybe that was how Vecna was able to get her, so that she thought she was also seeing the therapist, which is why they went to go see her at her house.
Yeah.
So kind of a funny moment,
I love
but
that.
also humor because she still didn't lose her sense of humor either
No,
because
which I do love.
I love even in the first episode where they're trying to get somebody to play
Do I get
D&D,
those
she's
cool
like
t-shirts?
exactly. So, just balancing I love how the show is able to balance that really dark, deep stuff with some lighthearted
Yeah.
humor,
Well, because
friendships.
I think it adds to, like, the authenticity of it,
Yeah.
because
Oh,
just
yeah.
because you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with, it doesn't mean that, you know, you lose your sense of humor, or you stop trying to help people, or that, like, it doesn't mean that life stops happening. Life
Yeah.
is still happening. I think music can help us, you know, to help ourselves and to help others.
Big time. I think music is so powerful, and it brings so many great memories. Where were
It
you when you
really
first heard it?
does. And, like, back to that scene where, Kate Bush is playing, and we have her flashbacks, her memories. Music is such an incredible, like, life-saving tool because it can help us transport us back to those happy memories.
Mm-hmm.
I think that song helped her to remember all the good stuff that was happening. Music, like, it just helps us to foster connection as we keep trying to help ourselves. Um, it just it carries some of that weight that we're feeling, like I said earlier, because it's easy to blame ourselves for everything. It's easy to blame ourselves for our mental health struggles and like what we're going through, and like, why can't I stop being a ghost? It's like, well, I want to stop being a ghost, but I don't know how to correct it. And I think music for Max was like one of the first ways she knew how to not be so much of a ghost.
Uh-huh.
Music was keeping her connected to her reality, while even when she didn't really want to be a part of reality.
Yeah. And I think it showed her too. Like, I love that it was Kate Bush. I had only heard that song once before on the Netflix show Glow. And everyone was like, "You've never heard Running Up That Hill before?" And I'm like, "I heard the Placebo cover before."
Right. I had heard the placebo
The
cover.
placebo cover is the first version I heard
You
too,
can
so I was
all
like,
tell we're around the same age because we're like the Placebo cover. But I love that it was Kate Bush because I heard like she was like very ahead of her time as like indie artist and stuff. And she's badass and kind of goes to the beat of her own drum. And I know some people, some hardcore OG fans were gatekeeping and they didn't like how popular it got, but she made a shit ton of money off that, got
Yeah,
into the
good for
Rock and
her.
Roll Hall of Fame. So I think you made this song, and she's made a ton of great music. You made the song 35 plus years ago. And then it becomes popular again, and you have this whole new generation of fans who didn't even exist when it first came out. So I love that it was a
Yeah.
female artist. I love, like, and I've had friends like break it down before the lyrics and stuff, and it's a really beautiful, haunting song. I've heard a lot of great covers of it since the song became so popular again. But I do like that. That was, thank God they knew her favorite song. Could you imagine? Like, dear
I
God.
mean, but also thank God that they're in the 80s and that they're not present day. Because could you imagine like bringing up her favorite song on YouTube or Spotify and then an ad interrupts it?
That's how I would have died because I'm a cheapskate. And I have the cheapest Spotify
Or
there
or
is.
or like you have a weak Wi-Fi signal and it's just buffering.
Yeah. They just look at our pretzel corpse and they're all like, "Well, this sucks." But yeah, I definitely love that. And, I'm sure you guys, from talking to you guys, I grew up with music that my parents loved. And there was an interview with Joe Keery. He said the same thing. That kind of inspired the kind of musician he was because he grew up. As soon as he named Supertramp, that was one of my mom's all-time favorite bands. And I was like, is he going to say Breakfast in America? And he said Breakfast in America. And it just made me so happy. I was like, oh my God, I thought everybody just knew the cover of that song. But I grew up with the classics from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. And, it would be interesting to know what all the characters' vecna song was, because I feel like that's a regular song, like question that they ask the cast members and stuff, and usually
Yeah,
they change. But it's just interesting what song would save you, you know?
right. I think yeah, they really did a lot. I heard a lot right after season 4 of people speculating, like, what each character's Vecna song would be, and that was really cool. But I think for me, though, it would be really hard because it's very hard for me to, like, pick, like, favorites of something, plus everything that I love, like, changes so frequently,
Hmm.
so it would really depend on, like, the day, what song would be most meaningful to me,
Megan, you
but I
definitely
think
die.
I think on the other hand, I think a lot of songs would do that for
That would
me,
snap you
kind of
out of it.
thing. Yeah, so, did you put any thought, Candace, into what your Vecna song would be?
I have been thinking about this since I first saw Dear Billy
Hmm.
back
Yeah.
in 2022 has been on my mind pretty often. At first I thought it would be something by My Chemical Romance.
Okay, yeah, I
Okay.
know you love that band,
Because
yeah.
I do, because that's a band that, they wrote Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge right after Gerard and Mikey Way lost their grandmother. Um, so I connected with their music and the brothers, the Way brothers, because we were both dealing with loss. Um, so I thought maybe it'd be something by that band, and I was like, oh, something off of Danger Days, like Save Yourself, I'll Hold Them Back, because like it's very on the nose. It's very much like going up against the big bad. Plus there's some really epic sounding guitar solos in there. But I think recently I've changed my answer to the song Crave by Paramore, which is off of their This Is Why album. Um, and I love it because like one of the lyrics that like really resonates for me is I romanticize even the worst of times when all it took to make me cry was being alive. And it really, I don't know, there's something like so poignant about it because it's just like, there's reasons to still stay alive and to keep seeing what your life has to offer you. Um, and it's just such a beautiful way of saying like, I wouldn't even change the awful stuff that I went through because it helped me to get to where I am now. It's not like I think that like my trauma made me stronger. I made myself stronger.
Mhm.
My friends, like you guys, have helped me to make myself stronger. Music has. But it's just like, no, everything bad that happens in life, there's so much beauty and joy to still experience.
Mhm.
Just because like some of those experiences have already happened, their value is still infinite.
Yep.
It's those happy times that like really help you to keep moving forward during like all the suckage, you know. So that's why I think Crave by Paramore would would be my Vecna song because I think it would just bring back the good memories with my friends, um, and everything. And I think it would just help me to really like keep running towards that light.
Mm, exactly.
Love that. Yeah.
Thank you. What about, is there a song that has really like helped you through tough times or like helps you to still like see the good and stuff?
I like a lot of Motown. My mom was a big fan of Motown and Elvis. Um, a week before she passed away, I remember I was having coffee with her and she wasn't sick. She died very suddenly. And she would, man, can you imagine what the choir in heaven sounds like? One day, because she was a believer, she was like, one day I'll be able to see all my favorite artists performed. And like gave me chills at the moment when it happened. So part of me was like, did she know? Damn. But anytime I hear anything from the Spinners, from the Supremes, Elvis, it makes me think of her. And she was always somebody who tried to make the best out of things. So I love stuff like that. Actually, like my Vecna song would probably be James Taylor Fire and Rain, so, which is
Mhm.
featured in season 4, which is that's one of my all-time favorite songs. Even though I know some people they rather like, you know, fall down into a sack of shit and listen to that song, but
It's just so sad.
it's so sad. And it just as soon as I heard it when they were driving the RV, I did the Leo point and I went, oh my God, I love that song. So that song, but I try to like keep things a little upbeat. Fur and Ray might not be the best choice,
I think
but
we talked about that song, or we kind of referenced that because we talked about with Chris how a lot of the same music from this season is in Remember the Titans,
yep.
Oh
and
yeah.
it's
Oh
like I
God.
can't get that, like, out of my mind when I think of that song, so
Why did I just picture Vecna in like a football uniform?
Yeah,
yeah.
for real. Like which I will never forget when we were interviewing Chris. He's like, yeah, I was like, did he say he was in kindergarten when Remember the Titans came out and you and me just like eyed each other? And I'm like,
I think I was at least in middle school.
We
What year
were
was
in
that?
high school. Jam. But yeah, I like upbeat music. I love the oldies and stuff, the classics, but there's a lot of great music coming out. People used to always make fun of me for knowing nothing about music. I have to, even though I keep calling her Samantha Carpenter, Sabrina Carpenter, like I love Chapel
Chapel
Roan.
Roan. Yeah.
So good.
Oh, Travel Roan. She is such a queen.
She
Yeah.
is. She's I like her
Absolutely.
a lot.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, there's a lot of good, like, new music
Yeah,
recently.
this
Like,
new
I feel like pop
generation.
music, I'm, like, connecting with it a lot more than, like, I
So,
don't know, like, maybe 10 years ago, 5, 10 years ago.
Megan,
I agree.
Yeah.
would you pick like a pop song then for your Vecna song, you think?
So, no, I think so I have a couple things to talk about too. I I one, I'm, like, very nostalgic too about my music, so I
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
music that kind of, like, brings me back to I don't feelings of, like, being younger, and you always feel like you were less stressed when you were younger, even though in the moment you were still stressed. Like, I was so
Oh,
stressed
yeah.
out in high school, but,
Well,
When
like
like,
you
and
look
it's
back,
like
you're
that
like,
lyric I mentioned earlier. It's like you romanticize even like the stressful times. Like, oh, that was so great.
Exactly.
It's like,
yeah.
no, like the stress was still there.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there's a couple songs I thought you would like this because I feel like you're a Green Day fan, but
I am.
You
so
are. Yep.
the Good Riddance, I was a theater kid. I was never, like, the lead in the musicals, but, like, I did the musicals. So, when we would do the musicals, it was, like, one of those little traditions that everybody before opening night would all stand together and hold hands and literally sing that song, and it started before me. I'm hoping it continued after I was there, but, like,
I
that
love
song
that.
is, like that's a very good,
Which
like,
Green Day song?
good
Good.
riddance, time of my
Oh,
life.
the
Yeah.
ultimate graduation song.
Yeah.
It's actually cool that you brought that up because when I saw them um back on August 28th, that was the last song that they played
That's what
was
they
Good
closed
Yeah.
it
Riddance
out
to
with?
tie up
Wow.
everything. Yeah,
Was it,
that's what
like,
they end their set
an
with.
encore or, like, the last song before an encore?
Uh, it was, if my memory is correct, which I'm hoping it is,
Yeah.
I think it was I think it was the last song, just like uh, the
Just the
last song before
general
the
last
encore.
song?
I
Okay.
think it was like the
Yeah.
general last song. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
it's
I
just
feel like it would be a good song for an encore. Like,
That
you
is,
they
right?
l like,
yeah.
they leave and you think that they haven't played it yet, and then they, like, come back out and play it.
I'm gonna have to ask Candace because I saw them in 2006 and really dating myself. I can't remember one damn thing, and I was sober during that concert, but I'll have to ask somebody from high school that I went to with it because I tell you what song they did it out with. But I remember it was a hell of a show. They put on a good show. Was it a great show?
It was fantastic. I mean, their latest album is The Saviors. So it was the Saviors tour, but it was also the 30th anniversary of their album Dookie, which came out in 1994, and then the 20th anniversary of American Idiot.
20
And
years?
Yeah, American Idiot is it's the first album I fell in love with. Green Day is the first band I fell in love with.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Like it's been such like a huge part of my life, that band and that album, their music. I don't think I'd be who I am today without them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just so meaningful, such a beautiful experience. They played both albums in their entirety.
That's
That's
awesome.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, plus the new stuff. But Billy Joe Armstrong, the lead singer of Green Day, I connected with him because he lost his dad when he was 10,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
I lost my mom when I was 11. And so I just think, it's so beautiful how music can really connect us when we're feeling isolated and lost and stuff. And I just going back to the show, season 4, like I just wish I could like hug Sadie and just like hug everyone who's worked on that show for creating such a meaningful, healthy narrative on mental health. Because I think they've really helped to decrease the stigma surrounding these mental health issues. And I'm so happy they didn't do what they've done in our earlier seasons, like Megan, you said, where it's like they go through so much, but we don't really often get to see it. Case in
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
Steve
Steve
Harrington, I'm pretty
Harrington.
sure has PTSD, but he's just, he's fine. Don't worry
Yeah.
about it. But
If we
I,
don't get to see Steve, like, break down in season 5, I'm gonna riot because I
Yeah.
yeah,
need it.
and I also think too, before I lose my train of thought, like
Yeah.
I think when you go through loss at a young age like Max has,
Hmm.
I remember the adults in my life, a lot of them like minimized what I was going through because I wasn't an adult. It's like, oh,
Mm,
it's different for you because you're a kid. I love that the show doesn't they don't invalidate what kids are going through.
Yeah.
And I think that is so, so important
yeah.
because if I had had someone, say like, hey, what you're going through, it doesn't matter that you're not an adult, it's real and it's still hard.
Yeah. Loss
I
is
think that
loss.
really would have like helped me in the long run because I think even though I went to counseling and stuff early on after my mom passed, I still felt the need to like be okay
Hmm.
and to
Mhm.
like not really let on that I was still struggling. And, bands like Green Day and My Chemical Romance, like I feel like I owe them, I have so much gratitude because just like the show, those bands were saying, we're seeing the kids who are struggling, seeing the kids who are
Mhm.
trying to be okay, and everything was scary and hard and challenging. They were the adults in the room, so to speak, that saw those kids and was like, hey, you're valid and you're not alone. And if I if we can make it to adulthood, you can too. Like keep going. There are people who love you.
Yeah.
There are people who want to be there for you, you
Yeah.
know.
And that's cool that they're kind of still touring and still playing and
Oh, it's
still going.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
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 So, for me, another artist, though, that's been really kind of important in my sort of mental health journey, and it's not a very well-known artist, but his
Mhm.
name is Trevor Hall.
Oh, you
So,
mentioned him.
shout
You
out
saw him
for
this
Trevor
year, didn't
Hall.
you?
I have seen him close to 30
That's
times.
That's
I am
amazing.
seeing
amazing.
I am seeing him again in Philadelphia in the beginning of October, so I'm super excited. I need to, like, go back to my list. I tried to make a list of all the shows I've been to so I could, like, keep track
That's
because I
awesome.
lost count. But I first heard his music in yoga class, so I was in a couple yoga classes, and it was on the playlist, and I I couldn't figure out I didn't know who it was, so I started kind of remembering some of the lyrics that I was hearing because
What genre
they
is he?
so it's very hard to describe. It's
Okay.
it's like he does it's a little bit reggae inspired, kind of spiritual music in a way, but rock and roll. And so it's like perfect for yoga. So I was hearing it in yoga and I like Googled lyrics that I could remember. And that's how I figured out who he was. And I realized that he was going to play a show at a yoga festival that was happening like 20 minutes from my house, like in a couple months from like when I first discovered him. So then I was listening to him all the time, ended up seeing him at the festival, have seen him almost 30 times since then. But his music kind of like, again, similar to like Stranger Things, but like got stuck in my brain and like was really beneficial to kind of changing the way I thought about things because he is very like it's sort of meditation, Eastern spirituality inspired. So I actually did end up doing yoga teacher training and became a yoga teacher. I'm not teaching anywhere right now, but I obviously have him on all of my yoga
I
playlists.
love that.
I
So
love that.
but it's like when you go to a show, it's not necessarily like you're sitting there at a yoga class because he is like he's like a rock, like a full band, like it's a rock
Right.
and
I
roll
mean,
type
although
show, but
now I'm just
yeah.
like, okay, now do Downward Dog while I play this next song.
I love that.
Exactly. So it's cool because I feel like even people who will listen to him, you really like it, but then the experience of going to a live show, and I feel like for a lot of bands, that's the same thing. It's like it, the experience of going to a live show of Trevor Hall is like separate from just like his music. And I like both of them. But again, it has brought me like so much connection too, because just like I enjoy meeting people through the Stranger Things community, I had met so many people going to these shows because he's been super important to a lot of other people as well. So it's cool to connect with people that way. So I feel like really any Trevor Hall song would save me
Would
from
help you.
I
vecna.
love that.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
Stacy, we gotta remember this, okay? In
we got to
case.
remember it. Yep. I'm going to be like, Hall and Oates. That's what she said. Yep.
And then one more shout out because I could talk about music for like forever, but
Oh, so
the
could I.
Beatles, same thing.
Okay,
I have been
I was just
obsessed with
going
the
to mention the
Beatles.
Beatles
Yeah.
because my mom loved the Beatles and she sparked my appreciation for them. She actually met John Lennon on the sidewalk in New York
Oh
once.
my
Wow,
gosh,
that's
that's
amazing.
Like they
amazing.
didn't talk or anything, but like it was this cool like moment where like they acknowledged each other and they
Hmm.
smiled at each other and stuff.
That's so cool.
So I think yeah, Beatles.
Yeah, any Beatles song, I've been obsessed with them from a young age because my parents would listen to them, especially my dad. But I, in college, really got into the movie Across the Universe
Hmm.
when it came out
Oh, it's
with
such a
all of the
gorgeous film.
covers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful movie, and I got to see the Beatles Love show in Las Vegas, which is a Cirque du Soleil
Oh, that's
show.
cool.
But before I'd ever even seen it, I would listen to the soundtrack of that, which is like a lot of Beatles songs just kind of like put together because it's what they use for the Cirque du Soleil show. But yeah, I in my life, if I had to pick a Beatles song, would probably be another like a favorite, but also because it brings me back to, for some reason, I I did this, I feel like I've talked about this before, but I did this volunteer program after college and lived in the Marshall Islands for a year and with like 35 other volunteers. And one night we like all decided to sing that song. I feel like a few people were learning how to play ukulele and they were like playing that song. So we were all singing it.
That's
That's
I
so
guess
amazing.
just like
awesome.
moments of like connection and singing with people like stick out in my mind.
Aw.
I
So
mean,
yeah.
I can like I remember being in college and like my roommates and I would have like our own karaoke night basically.
Yeah. Yeah. My roommates and I have a lot
Yeah.
of songs
Yeah.
from college
Yeah.
that bring me back to that.
Oh, yeah.
What is the song? What is the movie? What is the movie
Pitch
where
Perfect?
no Knocked Up and they go
Oh.
to the club they're doing the dice?
Yep.
Like you know what
He's
I'm talking
throwing the
about, right?
dice. It's the only movie he's got. Yep. Stacy in
Whatever
college.
song that is. Also,
Oh,
Soldier Boy,
Soldier
tell him.
Boy.
That
Oh
was
my god.
college.
That was college. Soldier Boy.
All right. So I feel like that's a nice little
Yeah.
Yeah.
lighthearted note to end in
Yeah.
singing and dancing in college with your
If you
roommates.
get the
Although
copyrights to Soldier Boy, play it over the, the credits, please.
can I add something?
Yeah, go for
It's
it.
like going back, you brought community and how like you found community by going to uh his name again?
Trevor Hall. Yeah.
Trevor Hall's concerts. I found that through Green Day and all the other bands I'm into. But I think the show also like really like Kate Bush's song Running Up That Hill like really showed that Max has community. But
Yeah.
I think the community became even more close knit and stronger because of her music. So I
Yeah.
just thought that was like really cool too.
Yeah. And I guess that is a good note to end it on because you can find community in places that you wouldn't necessarily think. And wherever you're
Exactly.
able to find that community
Go
is
for it.
valid,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
do it, because people we've found each other online.
I
So
know.
it's even for like kids, we tell them like to be careful on social media,
Yeah.
obviously, but
Especially
there
with
is,
AI now.
Yeah.
yes. Oh gosh. Yes, but there are so many ways to find that, and just knowing, how to be safe in those spaces, but to
Exactly.
allow yourself to find community where you can, and
Exactly.
where yeah.
And we're
So
doing this
that's
during Suicide Prevention Month, which like was not intentional at all when I chose like this month to do the interview in. But I was just like, wow, how fitting.
yeah. And it's not going to be out during that month. I can
No,
promise
but
We're
you
I just
that.
putting this in
I,
September.
no, I just thought for us, like I was like, oh wow,
yeah.
let's do
Yeah, but
that.
Yeah.
it's a beautiful note
Yeah.
because
It
that
is.
with Max's line, "We thought we
I'm
lost
still
you. I'm
here.
still here."
I'm still
So
here.
find your people. People out there that are listening. Find great music, find great movies, find great communities, find great friends because you do matter and you're still here.
You're
Yeah.
still here. We're all still here, and you know, to
Well, thank
whoever's
you for
listening,
being
we love
here.
you.
Yeah, of course.
Candace, where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram at Fine to Be Weird.
Cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome. All right. Well,
All
thank
right.
you for being here. We had fun
Thank you,
chatting.
darling.
Thank you for having me. You guys are amazing. Thank you.
Over and out.
Over and out.
Over and out.